analysis by analysis, looking at hundreds and hundreds of properties and still not bought. What are some of the tips that an expert real estate agent panel can share? We'll tell you right now. Stay tuned.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Morning Minutes, episode 459. Gone to 200 open homes and still have not bought a property. Is there something wrong with you? How can we help? I think this is, we hear this quite often, don't we, Mark, where a client, they've just been looking for 3 months, 6 months, a year. You do hear the odd crazy story. They've been looking for 2 years, but let's keep it reasonable for this discussion of 1 year.
We've heard every excuse under the sun. Every excuse.
100%. And I think there was an article by realestate.com which had a couple in Queensland gone to 200 open homes. And we thought this is quite common, maybe not to the extent of 200 open homes and the time frame, but it's very common for us to deal with a purchaser who has been looking for 3 months. They just they don't know what they want. Or so the point of this video is not to pay them out, but to basically identify some good tips and also where you need to be mentally and some decisions you need to make before you really can buy a property. And what I mean by that, we see it a lot with first home buyers where they're basically, let's say they're only going to live in it for the first 6 months, but they're looking through every property with the eyes that they're going to live in there and it's going to be their forever home, when it could be just an investment. And you got to separate it. Is this a home for you and your family, or is it an investment? Because there are a lot of properties that you would not live in, but are great investments. And it's almost like I always say to clients, like, you've got to take your homeowner hat off and put your investor hat on. Does it make sense? When a purchaser is trying to put both hats on, they don't get anywhere. They go to 200 open homes and they don't buy anything because they'll either love the property, but then the numbers don't make sense, and then the investor side of their brain talks them out of it. Or they see a property, the numbers look great, and the homeowner emotional side goes, but I wouldn't live there. There's a power pole next to it, or there's a whatever next to it. And they just keep going around in circles. So I think that's a big component.
I think you've got to look at it psychologically, Michael. There's a physical side to it where you can't physically get to the properties. You're just working so much you can't get out there. There's a financial side of this where we even speak with people that have half of the deposit and they still don't think they got enough. They still they still just can't get in past that financial hurdle in their head. There's just the sheer fact of not being able to, anxiety about not being able to make a decision, so I guess it's easy for us on the outside to go, you haven't bought yet, you should do this, you should do that. But at the same time, these barriers are the problems for different people, different barriers that are there. And I think how do you identify and get over those barriers? Well, we're going to give you some of those today to talk about, but they're definitely there. And people can be on this merry-go-round, like this article you're talking about, 200 properties, checking them out. It's incredible.
Yeah, so just to go through, I'll bring it up on the screen, but I'll read it from my phone just because we've got the lights in the way. So this is the article. Yeah, they have attended more than 200 open homes, lodged dozens of expressions of interest, and have been the underbidder at auctions in the past year. The dedicated couple even came close to purchasing a block of land, which is now seen as, see, this is hindsight, like with property, where your biggest mistake is not buying it. So you're going to open homes, you're getting the contracts reviewed, you're doing building and pest. Like, look at this story, and it shows how this little part of it, where it's like, we looked at a block 6 months ago, we offered 350, it sold for 360. So they let it go for 10 grand. And then it was back on the market a few months later and sold for 430,000. It's like with property, the only bad buy is the buy you don't buy. And think how much money they spent from when they missed out on that property to when it resold, just in lawyers and contracts, just for letting it go, for not going that extra mile for $10,000. And it's a block of land. So if you can't sort of get around buying a block, like if you've put a block of land as an option and you can't get a block, it's going to be very hard to buy a home when you got a million things to critique. But grass is grass.
Stretch yourself. Stretch yourself. If the bank's willing to lend you the money, you're going to be okay, because they've done a stringent test on your financials.
Yeah, that's 100%. And I think so. There's two parts to it. I think there's nothing worse when you see people get caught up over 5 or 10 or 15 grand. And I think people need to look at it in perspective. 10 grand on a mortgage is probably like $100 a year. It's basically nothing to get it. And you basically put all the looking to the end, and how quickly you can chew up 5 or 10 grand in due diligence looking for a property. So for example, you let a property go because it was 10 grand more, because this is what in the article it says. They're basically, they're very educated now. We're seeing, and I'd hope so, after seeing 200 open homes, they don't have a property, but they're more educated. But that almost puts them in a worse position, because they compare too much. You know too much. You're like, you go see a home you love, and you're like, well, one a couple months ago sold for 350. They want 380. It's overpriced, because in the article it says they're looking for value. It's like, no, the word value should not come up in your vocabulary when you're looking for your family home. You're gonna
have buyer remorse before and after. Buyer remorse is just this guilt that you carry. And the only thing that will remove buyer remorse is time, and probably 1 or 2 or 3 years when you look back and you go, ha ha, all that's gone, because you've seen the value grow. But you're always going to have that sensation that could be paying, or have paid too much. Like, you're always going to feel like that.
But you got to look big picture. Let's say you do pay 10% too much. What does that really mean for you if that's your family home? You're going to be there for 10 years. Like, okay, it's worth 400. You paid 440. Big whoop on your mortgage, and maybe $10 extra. Well, what's 40 grand at 2%?
You don't want to pay market value.
Yeah.
If it's selling and you're not buying it, you didn't want to pay market value. Doesn't matter how it got there. You didn't want to pay market value.
Correct. And especially when you know, because it's made comment that they know it's a rising market. So in a rising market, it's very hard to get a deal. The deal is buying, because you buy like that block of land. They had the example. If they bought it if they paid the extra 360, even if they thought they were overpaying, 6 months later, 4 months later, it's worth 430. They're all good. But
what's the opposite, Michael? Ever tried catching a knife that's falling to the ground? Right? What's the opposite? It's a crap market, and then the buyers are complaining again. The buyers are going, well, we're not really sure about the market. We're going to wait. It's like, man, it's a rising market. You're complaining. It's a falling market. You're complaining.
And none of it should matter, really, if it's your family home, because you have to live somewhere. I understand if it's an investment, you may be a bit more like digging into the numbers and the return and all that stuff to a certain degree. But if you're a young couple looking for a home for the next 10 years, because they have to be living somewhere. So while they're not paying a mortgage and they're paying all this due diligence, they're still paying rent somewhere. So even throw this out there as well, where you've got to choose your investor hat or your homeowner hat. In the article, it says they've been renting for 7 years. So maybe they should just buy an investment. If they've been living in one property for the 7 years, they probably like that property. So keep living there and just buy something.
Not a silly idea. Not a silly idea.
Yeah. And I think that's because even a rising market, you think you pay too much, you're just going to move on with life, because seeing 4 to 5 open homes every week for a year, that's basically a part-time job. You've basically put
What about getting a second job? Earn more money.
Well, that's the other thing. If you're getting priced out, go get a second job, get the income up, and enable yourself to buy that property.
If you can.
Because
if you can. Buying reports cost money.
Yeah. I'd love to know how many. Go on, sorry.
What did that say in that article?
No, I didn't say how many properties, but if they've gone to 200 open homes, there's probably be at least 20 properties they did due diligence on, you would think. And that's maybe $1,000 to get the lawyer, $1,000 or $2 each time to get the solicitor to do a contract, building and pest. It's very very frustrating. You just where's someone just to help them in the advice? You're almost like, what? Also, they would have been seeing the same agents over and over again, and a good agent should be able to pull them in a room and go, guys, what are you doing? Do you just love real estate looking through, or let's look at some things? Like, what's stopping you buying? Because after 6 months, even after 6 months, the amount of money and time they spent on due diligence would have far out. Because in that article, there was a couple of properties. One they missed out on for $10,000. One they missed out for $7,000. Like, it's I think some people just take the plunge, buy the property, move in, and get on with your life, and reevaluate real estate in 5 years' time.
Big time. And I heard I heard one of the agents in the office yesterday say to the agent, "You got to trust. I will tell you what to do to buy the property. You have to do it. You have to trust the process." So I think sometimes if in that way, the agent's actually going to tell you more often than not, and you sort of got to trust that process a little bit. Like, not everything, but you got to just, good agent, you just trust that process, and you're going to have to go out on an edge a little bit, because if you're seeing over probably 80, 100, 120 properties, I don't think the problem is the market. I think the problem's probably you, and then that's okay. That's not a bad thing. And there's some of these things that we've spoken about today to have a look at and drill down on, and say, look at this avenue of what you're doing, or that avenue of what you're doing, that hopefully will help. So if you know anyone that's in this pickle, share it with them. Grants are another one. There's some really good grants out there. Make sure you're milking all of your grants that are available to you. The most untapped grant that I know about at the moment is brand new. It's single parents. There's a 5% deposit allowance for single parents that just came out in the budget, and also first-home buyers can use part of their superannuation, may be able to use part of their superannuation to form up into their deposit if they don't have enough deposit to get into that market or go that extra little bit.
Yeah, and you know what the scariest thing is when I hear someone's been looking for a property for a year? Like, Mona Vale, Northern Beach has gone up 40%, 39% in a year. Let's say the first month you're looking at properties, they were 1.6. Now they're 2.1. You may not even be able to buy in the suburb you were looking at, and you're just thinking to yourself, shit, I should have just bought the property that was 70% okay and just got into the market. And now I'm priced out. Now I'm looking 4 suburbs away, or because I was umming and ahhing over the smallest things. And people got to remember, you can paint a property, you can move a kitchen, you can knock down walls. You may not be able to do it straight away, but so often in residential, people don't buy properties because they're like, oh, I don't like the paint color. Well, paint it. I don't like the carpet. Do new carpet. You can do all these things down the track. You may not have the luxury of doing it before you move in, but you'll be able to do it.
Perfection doesn't exist.
Correct. And if you want it, build one. And then even that has its issues because there's, as we said on buying off the plan, there's never a building defect free. So there's going to be an issue. But hopefully the builder comes out and fixes it. But yeah, I think a good message for people out there.
And it's certainly not coming from an angle of a constructive angle to say, look, we know there is a problem. If you do have a problem, and what is the problem, and what are the tools that you can actually get to overcome that problem? Because I think that probably allowing 2 to 3 months to learn about property and look at properties, probably after 30 to 40 properties, you're going to be a bit of an expert on how to price that property and what's out there, and go for it. And don't be hard on yourself. Just buy something and rent it out and stay where you actually are. So you don't necessarily have to live in the puppy that you're buying. If you can't find that perfect property, rent the perfect one and just get into the property market.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that's a good point. Like, this wasn't an attack on them because there are a lot of people in this scenario, in this situation. That it may not be at this scale, but they're going through that. They're going, I want value, but I want my dream home. I want this. So hopefully there's some tips there, or at least bring it to light, because some people may go to 100 open homes and think that's normal. Like, let's just set the record straight. I think most people are looking for 1 to 2 months, and they may go to 10, 20 homes before they're bought, max. Don't you reckon?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
I reckon about 20.
So any more than you have a problem.
But we're always happy to help. So, don't feel silly about picking up the phone and asking us these sort of questions, friends or family of the viewers as well. We're always happy to help, but it's a big issue at the moment, particularly in a rising market, but it's equally a big issue mentally in a shrinking market, because you're thinking you don't want to buy something that's worth less later. And we've had that happen in the property market. Very rare.
Yeah. All righty. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
See you, everyone. Have a great day.